So it'll start right now. So now the music is playing. All right, so welcome to the Grodcast. I'm Young Greasy.
Thank you, Young Greasy.
Today my guest is Doc Pepper. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Doc Pepper. That's a very, old alias of mine. I'm here in Somerville, Massachusetts. Friends of Griffin's from college. We play a little Smash together and other stuff, I think.
Who did you main?
Mechanical engineering. Oh, Jigglypuff.
Yeah, very different answers. All right. Well, let's just get started with the first question. What is important?
It's a pretty good question. Well, kind of. I guess with questions like that, I feel you can spin that any way you want, based on what's important to you. Like if I'm some guy where my whole thing is like, religion or family is important, I could just like talk about that. Or if I'm some guy where I have like some other like strong opinion about something, I could like spin that into that. I guess like important, it's to the individual. All right, like to me, I think what's important is like, like working hard and like sort of like trying to apply yourself and this and that and like, be good to your family and stuff like that. But yeah, I guess do you mean to the individual or in general?
I don't know, man. So going off that working hard, are you being utilized currently to your best ability then?
Yeah, I think so. As I said, I majored in Jigglypuff and Mechie, and I basically have just done that like continuously in one way or another since then, which I know like, a lot, you can't always, it's not always the case for people.
Is it still fun for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's, I sort of, like with stuff like mechanical engineering, I think there's an element of it's more about like what you're accomplishing always in the actual process. Like I don't think there's anyone who works in Mechie who would tell you that like every single, second of it is fun. A lot of it actually really sucks. There's a lot of like, it's just the same thing for chemical engineering as well. But it's like, at the end of the day, what are you actually able to like apply yourself to, and what problems you're able to solve, I think is where the satisfaction comes in.
Are you allowed to talk about what specific stuff you're doing, or is it all confidential? I find as we get older, more and more people's work becomes mystery.
Yeah, see, I sort of like that because like I don't really like talking about work in too much detail, so it's like I can't talk about that. It's confidential. But I could talk about like general stuff.
Yeah. Why don't you spend 30 seconds doing that? I want to keep it digestible, but want to hear what you're up to.
Yeah, so magnets are very cool.
Okay.
But like permanent magnets, there's a limit to the fields you can achieve with those, right? So if you want really strong magnetic fields, you have to have magnets where you're creating the magnetic field, but through a current, right? Electromagnets. And if you want really really strong fields, you actually have to use superconductors, where the amount of current you can drive through them without just making them heat themselves up until they melt away is very very high. So I work on designing like superconducting magnetic coils, like to achieve very high fields for energy applications.
Do you have to work at really cold temperatures then?
Yeah, exactly. Because like there's these things called high temperature superconductors, but high temperatures, it's relative, right? Like, it's like, what do you have to use? It's relative from like, are you talking about like, just above absolute zero, which is your conventional superconductors, to are you, maybe liquid nitrogen ranges? That's your high temperature superconductors.
Yeah, because that's balmy.
Yeah, and the funny thing is like, even if you have a high temperature superconductor, you actually want to make it really as cold as possible because that gives you more margin on your current.
Interesting. All right. Well, on to question 2 of the 6. What is one of your favorite movies and why?
That's the kind of question I like. Because like stuff like what's the meaning of life? Again, I feel like that's just a mirror where people can just project whatever they want onto that. But that's this is more. I think everyone has a favorite movie, and everyone has a good reason for that.
I'm trying to come at it from both angles, though.
Yeah. No, I'm not criticizing you. I'm just saying, that's how I feel about those questions. Yeah, I think a movie I recently rewatched, which it's definitely my favorite, or one of my favorites, is Fargo. Have you rewatched Fargo?
I watched part of it on a plane, but the plane ride ended before the movie did, so.
No, then, well, okay, you got to pick it back up. But yeah, Fargo, I watched it a second time recently. Definitely held up. It's like, takes place, in like upper Midwest. It's very cold. And on one side, you have this sort of like heroic, like pregnant cop, Marge. And the other side, you just have this cast of just every sort of lowlife, like just trying, purely motivated by greed and, this and that. And basically, like she tracks down this like ridiculous, convoluted case of like a fake kidnapping. And Steve Buscemi's in there. It's really good.
Yeah, I find he shows up in almost every Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah. He has the Coen Brothers. They have, I think, a favorite cast of characters.
Yeah. Huh. In general, are there any Coen Brothers movies that you just like couldn't get behind? Like, it was too far-fetched?
No. Well, okay, let's see. A Serious Man was Coen Brothers, right?
I don't know. I'm no movie buff. Yeah.
That I still liked a lot, but that was like at the edge of it, Mm-hmm. That's my movie recommendation. Is you watch A Serious Man, and then watch In Bruges immediately before or after that. And In Bruges, that's different directors, but there's all these weird parallels with the movies. Like they have like the same guy behind like sound design, and you watch them and you're like, what
came first?
That's a good question. I feel like they came out very close to each other. Like I'm not gonna go to the internet, on this one, but I think they're pretty close in time as well.
Interesting.
Maybe In Bruges is earlier. That's my guess.
Do you have any tips on insider trading?
Don't do it.
Don't do it? Okay.
Actually, I had a friend who, I don't want to rat anyone out, but I feel like the people who get away with insider trading, it's like, it has to be the most random thing ever. You can't try to do insider trading. It just has to come to you. But yeah, don't do insider trading.
You heard it here first, listeners. Don't do insider trading.
Yeah. And if you do it, it has to have come to you in like a vision. It can't be something you're like seeking out.
Like love.
Yeah.
Love and trading. So, can you tell me a little bit about why you do what you do?
Yeah, it's a pretty good question. Why do I do what I do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like there's a few things. One is just like, I think you should be motivated in part by like gratitude and obligation. Like, I'm not saying I'm a saint or something, but like especially with like family. I feel like you should have a sense of loyalty and like gratitude for everything people have done for you, and that should motivate a lot of your decision making. And the other thing I think is like, I'm motivated at least in part by like actually trying to like push things to the limit a bit and like, what can I do? What can I not do? And not just be like stagnant, because that's like, that I think is one thing I think bothers me a lot is a lot of people is just the feeling of stagnancy.
Do you prefer, like, you're speaking push yourself, like, to push yourself, you gotta pretty much be at the extremes. Do you find life is better at the extremes or in the middle?
See, I think there's like degrees because, I'm not like, some intern at like JP Morgan working 140 hours a week. I've never done that. I don't think I'm capable of that at all. Like for me, what I'm capable is something much, much less than that. So yeah, like I'm not even sure like if there is a middle, because I think people just have their limits of how hard you're willing to work. Yeah, I mean, I think it's almost like what's the word for it? Like just trivially true that obviously extremes are bad. That's just the definition of an extreme.
I don't know. I feel like I enjoy the extremes, but it does get a little dangerous.
Extremes in small quantities, I think.
Yeah, in bursts.
It's good to have. Yeah, it's good to have had times in your life where you're at the extreme, and then you can think back about that and learn from that and appreciate that. So I think that makes sense.
Do you think we'll always be finding higher infinities?
I don't know. I think at a certain point you have to just become peaceful old person. You can't be like the Brian Johnston guy being like, my entire life is now devoted to living forever and injecting blood for my son. I think there's a limit to that.
Yeah, I am not a huge fan of needles, so I guess I'll have to die. Oh, this is a good one. So in the next Olympics, I don't know where they're gonna be at, but will you be Team Mario or Sonic?
I think I'm Team Mario. Because it's Italian check, plumber check. Sonic is just, I think, sort of more just always a little more creepy to me.
Yeah, and he's neither of those two things.
Yeah, and it's he just, he runs really fast. Mario's just a guy, hopping around.
Just some dude. He's just a furry. But
yeah,
I feel like I usually play as Shadow, so I guess that makes me Team Sonic.
In what, in the actual game?
Yeah. I guess I like to be edgy. Yeah.
Does Shadow make you Team Sonic though? Because isn't Shadow Sonic's enemy, or his some sort of anti-hero in the Sonic series?
At least until Robot Sonic showed up.
I see.
But this is not a podcast on Sonic lore.
Let's make it the worst Sonic lore podcast ever. I think it's then the robot comes okay, now we need to unite against the bigger threat.
Was the robot built by Robotnik? Oh, Sonic 3 is coming out too.
I'm sure that's going to be really good.
The movie I'm actually excited for is Maxine, because I really liked Pearl, but I wasn't a huge fan of X, but I don't know. Ty West, I feel like he's onto something.
I don't know. Actually, I don't know what Pearl is, and I don't know what Maxine is.
Oh, dang. So basically, X is this movie Kid Cudi's in, and he plays a porn star along with some other people, including Mia Goth. Jenna Ortega's a camera person, but basically they go to this old couple's farm to film a porno, and the old lady, Pearl, just starts killing all of them. And that's the whole plot of the movie. But Pearl is the origin story of the old lady, and Maxine is the third part of that trilogy.
I see. Wait, so who's Maxine?
One of the people in X who was a porn star, who's played by Mia Goth, who also plays Pearl.
I see. So is this a Saw thing where she's that was such a good idea, I'm gonna make my own cabin in the woods to trap people?
It's unclear. It seems like they're moving to the city, but that didn't go so well in Scream 6, so we'll see. But
okay, I've just checked my audio is still recording. Okay, nice. Disaster averted.
Is it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyhow, enough about me. Moving on, question 4. Who is one of your favorite historical figures?
Ooh, that's a good question. Who is one of my favorite historical figures? Let me think for a moment, because this is, important question.
All right. Is there anything you want me to talk about while you think?
I'll think of something quick. Let's see.
Okay.
I'm just creating some nice dead air in the podcast.
Yeah. Maybe I'll put an ad here.
Yeah. No, I think there's definitely one thing I'll go with. It's like Jan Žižka.
Oh, I have no idea who that is.
Okay, he was this Czech guy. Are you familiar with like the Hussite Wars?
Nope.
So basically, like, a few hundred years before the Reformation, there were these Czechs who just basically the same idea, that they were sort of fed up with the Catholic order, and this guy Jan he was like, okay, I'm spinning out a new version of Christianity here, and this was heresy in the rest of Europe, but he rallied a lot of people in what is now the Czech Republic, then was Bohemia, and basically for like a few decades, like there were several crusades trying to stop the Hussites, and they were led, militarily they were led by this guy Jan Žižka, who basically, he's basically undefeated in battle, like just against insane odds, and he was like blind, and pretty crazy guy. And the whole time they're having their like also internal civil wars as well, and basically he just was a true gamer, did his own thing.
What do you think he did for fun?
I have no idea. Probably read religious stuff. That's my guess. With his one eye.
I think I could afford to lose an eye. I think losing 2 eyes would suck, but I would rather lose 1 eye than 1 ear. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, other historical figure? I have a lot of respect for all like the old timey like engineers who were doing stuff back in the day where it's not like there's like a catalog you could order stuff from. Like in England you have like the guy like whatever blah 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 Brunel, who is building these huge tunnels and bridges and railways just back in a time where everything was completely word of mouth. Like you'd have to spend like you have to send a letter to some like foundry up in Scotland or whatever, and it's like a year later you get your rivets, and it's just there's a lot of improvisation back in the days, and I wonder like if I were put back in that time, could I be an engineer? I probably not. You had to really just have insane self-confidence.
Even like back in like the 70s, before computers took over like simulations of bridge building, we kind of just hoped it wouldn't fail, and then a lot of them did. But nowadays we can use computers and run it 1,000 times, and only 3% of the time it fails, and that's safe enough for us, But
well, the computers have a role there, but like there's an aspect of like you don't really know what's important sometimes until something fails, and so it's like what like computers aren't just giving an answer. You have to like be asking the computer something. But so there are a lot of people who very early on just took a lot of risks and learned what was important from that.
Yeah, I'm just glad they wrote it down,
Yeah.
All right. Circling back a little bit, question 5. What is not important?
What is not important?
Yeah. I think this one's a little easier to answer than what is important, but
yeah, exactly. Because this I can just trash random things that I think a lot of people would agree are not important.
Yeah.
I think what's not important is just like getting super like it's just obsessing over like really trivial things that sort of just should be just lost in time. Like I watched this video recently where it's like someone tracked down the voice actor behind like a random character in like I don't even know, I forget the video game, like Sonic or something, like 50 years later. And there's an aspect to me that was like, that's pretty cool, but there's also an aspect of it that just made me feel a little bit like queasy, where I'm like, there's all these like weird little details that I think it's almost better if they remain just some cool little thing that if you know it, you know it. If you don't know it, you don't know it. Like I think there's a lot of these like things that sort of should just be lost in time. Like that's why I've mixed feelings when I see like speedrunning, where on one hand I'm like, this is incredibly impressive, but on the other hand, there's a part of me that just feels like when you're just digging into the guts of a game, like pulling out these things that some random, programmer did 50 years ago without, just meet a deadline or whatever. I'm like, is this good or is this important? I don't know.
Yeah. It's kind of how I feel about analyzing like hundreds of years old books, like
it's hard because like I think like history is good and like that's a lot of like pulling out details. See, you asked me a question that should be slam dunk, and I was like, okay, let's turn this into a diss against speedrunning.
Yeah.
Let's make this something that people is controversial.
Going off of that, do you think it's okay though that we spend time on not important things?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like I think it's good to be like, okay, I'm gonna spend 3 hours playing Catan online, and none of that it's gonna matter. But hey,
whatever feels good.
It's good for the mind.
Yeah. You gotta feed your brain those nutrients and those juices, and they're gifts. All right. So this one's a little more personal. Who has been telling you the truth lately?
I think top of the list is my girlfriend.
Yeah.
I always counted her to be honest with me. I'm like, take me seriously as a person, and I think that's a good thing to have in your life. Someone who will always tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm. I feel like there have been times when I didn't tell you the truth.
It's okay. I think we've had times where we haven't, but I think we've learned from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to err is greasy,
Yeah, I mean that happens between good friends, but I think it's usually like about small stuff, not big stuff, and you learn from that and move on.
Yeah, I guess that leads into the last question, which is just, what advice would you give yourself at 18? And do you think you'd listen to yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess that's actually probably a better answer for the not important stuff instead of randomly dissing speedrunning. Is that like a lot of the stuff that I was concerned about at 18, I'm like, that is so stupid. You shouldn't care about that at all. Like especially as like a teenager, high school or whatever, you're gonna find all these problems in life that are never gonna come up. Like you have all these insecurities that it's like, what if I'm at like the party and this happens, or like, what if I don't know how to do this in front of her? Like, there's so much stuff like that where it's like, that's never going to be an issue, Like, I remember as a kid, I was conscious, like, I have like one of those like chest concavity things, and I was like, as a kid, I like thought there would be a much bigger problem in life than it was, which was never any issue whatsoever, never anything you actually had to worry about. So I'd say, forget about all that stuff, maybe, put yourself out of your comfort zone more.
Does it feel like a long time ago?
Kind of does. It's funny, is like, as a kid, I did this thing where I'd send myself notes in a bottle, like, where like, as a 6-year-old, I'd be like, okay, message to myself in like 20 years, like, hi, And what's actually interesting is I've like passed all of those notes in a bottles I ever made for myself. So yeah, it does feel like a very long time ago.
What do you think you'll write down in the newest one?
Well, I stopped making those.
Oh.
Like it was as a kid, I would do this. I'd be like, oh hey, when you're like 20 and president of NASA, like hi, just silly stuff like that.
Do you have things for when you're 30? I feel like that's the next one for me. Yeah.
It's funny, like at college, they actually did make us write notes in a bottle to ourselves, and I
Yeah,
think I
but
just drew like
cards.
dicks. I got it back at the end, and I just drew dicks all over it.
Yeah, but in a way that's super true to yourself at that time is meme lord.
I see.
Do you ever go by Mr. Cool anymore?
No, I think I've retired that a bit.
Yeah.
The only time I think I'd bring that back is if I was at a bowling alley, and you have to like do your name. I think I'll always do Mr. Cool for that, even if it cuts off to Mr. Coo, as it often does.
What do you usually get above 100?
Bowling is like the weirdest thing I ever do, where it's like, I don't know, like it's one of those things where like a few years ago I went and I got like 130 and I was like, how the fuck did this happen? Because like other times I'll go and I'll get like 70 and I'm like, yeah. So yeah, it's I think I'd say it's maybe 30-70, like 30% of the time I get above 100.
Yeah, I miss bowling. The bowling
I gotta go
alley
bowling.
here closed.
Yeah, well, come here to beautiful Massachusetts and we'll hit up an alley.
Yeah, just don't dox yourself on here.
I already said what city I'm in, so that narrows it down to like 100,000 people.
And they know your true name.
Yeah, Mr. Cool.
All right.
And my social security number is. Yeah.
Let's not talk about my social security number.
Well, we can at least tell them it has a 6 and a 5 in it. Like, let's give them that at least.
Yes, because it does.
In that order.
Yeah, that's the year I was born, 65.
Yep.
Have you been seeing any shows lately? Concerts?
It's been a while since I've been to a. Actually, okay. The last concert I went to was me and my girlfriend went to a Baby Rexha
Okay.
in Atlanta, Georgia. It was right after someone like threw like a bottle at her.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. But no, I haven't been to a concert here. Yeah. What about you?
I over the summer, so kind of a while ago, I saw the Smashing Pumpkins with the Stone Temple Pilots, and that was pretty cool. But I just saw that Weezer is going on tour to play the Blue Album in full.
Wow.
With the Flaming Lips and Dinosaur Jr. So I think I'm going to try and get tickets to that. It
Nice.
will be my third time seeing Weezer. I'm outing myself as a Weezer fan, but...
Yeah. Best kept secret.
Yeah.
I actually was thinking of making my name here Rivers Cuomo.
Oh, that would have been awesome. Maybe
I should have done it now.
maybe season 2 of the Grodcast will get an appearance from Rivers Cuomo.
Yeah.
And Pat can play the drums.
Yeah.
Well, all right. I think that is about it. So I want to thank you again for coming on here. Is there anything you want to plug?
Listen to Young Greasy on Spotify and other stuff.
I'm honored. Yeah, you can find Chump Chang on all streaming services still. I think it's got at least 30 plays, so it's really popping off. All right. Where can the people find you?
On the Grodcast. This episode right now, actually.
Yeah, so I'll put a link to that in the bio.
Yeah.
Check it out. And all right. This has been the Grodcast featuring Doc Pepper. We're out. All right.
Thank you, Young Greasy.
Then some outro music.
Nice. All right, should I stop recording my audio now?